It's very easy to get caught up in the minutia, the day-to-day, the endless hamster wheel, the treadmill that never stops running, the toing and froing of this illusion. We tend to get so hyper-focused on the monotony and humdrum nature of our daily existence that we forget, or we never see, that this is nothing more than a mirage, a hallucination. Even for me, knowing, seeing the zeros and ones, seeing Yahuwah's hand, the Most High's hand behind all things, you still get caught up. You still get caught up in the everyday small things, the little things, the imperfections you attempt to make perfect, the minuscule wrongs you attempt to make right. The never-ending attempt to improve oneself. And you get lost in the weeds. There's that old saying. It's a cliche, really. But all of these old sayings, there's truth in them because, as has been said, there is nothing new under the sun. And that is, we lose sight of the forest for the trees. Or maybe it's that we don't get to appreciate the trees because we're caught up in trying to understand the forest. Either way, there's meaning in both. But you might still think that what you're seeing around you, all of this banality, the rote nature of the things that befall you in your daily existence, you might still see the lines in which you color as being reality. And so you don't ever get a glimpse of the peace and the joy and the healing and the solace and the loving and the everlasting life and the word and the way and the truth of Yahusha. Because you're so entrenched, you're so glued, you're so interwoven with this hallucination and the humdrum nature of it all, that if you really audit your life, you find that it's just made up of a bunch of meaningless, purposeless actions that lead nowhere. And at some point, this is where depression sets in. This is where sorrow sets in. This is where frustration sets in. Anxiety sets in. All of these issues that we face, mindset-wise, psyche-wise, is because we're tied down to this endless hamster wheel and we can't see beyond it. But And to do anything more, to get deep into philosophy and to get misled by all of the false prophets that are out there, all of the so-called wise ones and holy ones and magi and yogis and mentors, and I mean, just it's endless, those that would do nothing but seek to mislead you to their own blueprint, their own instructions, their own interpretation of Yahusha, such that they chain you to them, they yoke you to them, and they hold themselves out because what they give you is so complex, so comprehensive, so intricate. It's impossible to follow without their guidance, without their instruction, without their absolution, and without their interpretation. So you're tied to them. The beautiful thing about the real, the zeros and the ones behind this illusion, the bigger picture, such that you're set free from the banality of all this, the boredom, the humdrum nature of your daily existence, The beauty of it all is that it needs no interpretation. It needs no God, no man-made guide, no program needs to be sold to you. You don't need to follow any earthly teacher. You don't need to journey to the ends of the earth to find the wisest of the wise or the great philosophers. As Yahusha, Son of the Most High who delivers, the Most High who redeems, the Most High who saves. As he said, take my yoke and learn from me, for I am humble and meek at heart, and I will give you rest for your being. Because you're so burdened, you're so weighed down, you're so challenged, you're so crushed by the monotony of this world and its meaningless, purposeless nature until you find true meaning, true love, true healing, true joy, true purpose, true everlasting life. He says, I will give you rest for your being. For my yoke, he says, my yoke is gentle and my burden is light. And not that following the way, the truth, and the life, that narrow path that leads to the narrow gates, that leads to the kingdom to come, where there is no more hateness, there is no more hate or sadness, no more loneliness, no more misleaders or deceivers, no more corruptors or evildoers, no more haters, detractors, psychic vampires, negative influencers. There's no more decadence, depravity, defilement, debasement, no more Hashatan, no more demons, no more Lucifer, no more Satan. Crushed they are beneath his feet. There's no more war or misery. There's no more illness or death. There's no more murder or disease. There's no more pain or suffering. There's only Yahuwah, Yahusha, and the kingdom to come, paradise. Paradise, as we once had when we were first made perfect in his eyes. And we had everything, and we were perfect, and we were in healing and in love and in joy and in peace and in solace. We had it all and everlasting life until we were misled by the serpent and the ways of this world and the ways of the flesh. He crushes all of that deceit and deception beneath his feet, washes it all away. And he lives amongst us once again. And there's only everlasting love, everlasting healing, everlasting joy, everlasting peace, and everlasting life. And where we can love him, honor him, glorify him, praise him, and worship him with all of our heart, souls, mind, and strength in a manner that pleases him most, because we are perfect once again, as we were. It's not to say that following that narrow road is not difficult, is not challenging. It is. But it is easy because we could see it. See, before we were stumbling in the dark, constantly tripping over ourselves on that hamster wheel that never ends, never being able to get off it, stumbling around in darkness, looking for meaning, looking for purpose, looking for love, looking for healing, looking for joy, mistaking those things for the accoutrements of the flesh, mistaking what our heart needed for decadence, depravity, defilement, debasement, mistaking the healing, the chasm, the canyon in our soul for drugs and alcohol and party and revelry and celebration, cheap thrills, cheap titillation, cheap highs, money, houses, cars, jewelry, all of the baubles and bedazzlement of this life. We mistook, we were misled, we were deceived by the evil whispers of this world. We were fooled into believing that would bring us happiness. That's the burden. Finding yourself caught up in that trap, in that rat race. That's where the pain and the suffering exists, in finding that you're empty and bereft and lonely and sad, because none of those things give you happy. nor the glory and esteem of man, nor all of their kudos, all of the titles, all the championships that you chase, all the mountains you climb only to find you're at the bottom of another mountain, all the questions you get answered only find there's more questions, all the doors you open only find that there are more doors locked in front of you, never getting the key that opens it all until you hear his calling, you heed his calling. His calling is your conscience. He's knocking on that door every day. He's beckoning you. Most of the time, we choose to ignore it because we turn a blind eye, we turn a deaf ear. We don't want to know, we don't want to see. But his yoke is gentle. His burden is light. And although this narrow path is not without its challenge, only because we're still in this world, in this illusion, tied to it in some way, we still have to navigate it. But now that we see the zeros and ones, now that we can see the path, because his light absolutely obliterates the darkness that we were stumbling around in, because he is the light of this world of which the darkness cannot comprehend, the darkness cannot understand, the darkness cannot fathom, the darkness cannot overcome. So now we live in his light, his warmth, his glory, his healing. But that same light that shines out on us, and in our salvation, in coming to Yahusha, asking for his grace, asking for salvation, we're flooded with the breath, we're baptized with the set-apart spirit, the breath of Yahuwah, the Ruach. And we're baptized in fire such that our heart is purified of all poison, of all toxins, of all chemicals, of all evil. And now our heart is righteous, and now that light bursts forth from when it heals us from within, bursts forth from us in an infinite number of ways, such that we're now compelled to live a life of example for our people, such that they could see us living with that dynamism, that robustness, that joy, that healing, that energy. And they know that if we can be saved, they know because they see that light emanating off of us, they know that they can be saved. So we live as an example for our people. We're like a lighthouse for those ships that are lost at sea. But that same light also illuminates that narrow path. So now we can see it. And what makes his yoke gentle and his burden light is that he gives us the strength now through the Ruach that lives with us, through our salvation and coming and confessing that he has come in the flesh, in repenting before him and asking for his forgiveness and feeling his love and being filled with the Ruach, being filled with his light. Knowing true grace, true redemption for the first time, and true forgiveness for the first times in our life. Because having come to that point, we know the sadness, we know the despair, we know the anxiety, we know the frustration, we know the loneliness, we know the shame and the guilt for who we were, what we were, and coming to him on our knees and surrendering to him, taking his gentle yoke. Offloading the burden of the humdrum nature of this world, the tapestry we're caught up in, filled with the meaninglessness and the purposeless tasks of this life, handing that heavy, weighted chainmail over to him and being restored, refreshed, revised, renewed, reborn, stronger than ever. He gives us the strength to carry the burden, the light burden of walking his path, because now we walk it willingly. We walk it not because we fear punishment, but because we love him with all of our heart, soul, minds, and strength. We've received the word. We know the way, the truth, and life. We understand the ultimate commandment to love Yahuwah with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love our fellow man as we love ourselves. So now we walk that commandment from which all other commandments spring, from which all the good things spring, from which all productivity, prosperity, wholesomeness, goodness, love, all the revelations, all the epiphanies, all the understandings spring from that simple commandment that he gives us and that floods our heart such that we understand it is written on our heart, the living law, the new law written on our heart, not like stone, not like the old commandments, not like the stone that perishes and fades and that we only followed because we feared condemnation, that revealed our sin and that meted out punishment. Those old traditions, rules, and regulations. They're meant for the unbelievers, the unfaithful, the new law, the living law when you receive Yahusha. And that living law, that singular commandment that you now understand and know, you follow that living law that gives you everlasting life. You follow it naturally, willingly. You desire to follow it. You're compelled to follow it because you love him. You want to. You know it brings you peace, solace, joy, healing, and everlasting life. And so it's easy to take his yoke. His yoke is gentle. He is meek. He is humble. Not meek as in weakness. Meek as in true strength. The strength to restrain your passions. To show discipline and self-control. To be humble in the face of it all. And you come to him in all humility, and he floods you with that grace. He floods you with that understanding. He floods you with those epiphanies. He floods you with those revelations. You receive more than you could have ever imagined. All that you search for, finally, you receive it all and more. Your cup overflows such that you're compelled to share it, to pay it forward, to shout from the rooftops, and to spread the good news. And all the questions you've ever asked, they're answered and more. The revelations, the epiphanies, the understandings, the comprehensions, such that every little word that he gives you in nourishing your soul on a daily basis, reading the good news, reading his parables, reading his stories, reading his phrases, reading about his life, even of the apostles, every single phrase, every single verse, every single chapter, as you ruminate, contemplate, and nourish your soul, they bring on new meaning, new understanding, new comprehension. You understand more than you ever imagined, and the zeros and ones are so clear now. You truly see what it's all about. You're no longer bothered by the humdrum nature of this world with its evils and its sin and its decadence, depravity, defilement, debasement. You could finally separate yourself from it. See it for what it is. Now you see the bigger picture. Now you see the grand plan. Now you see the hand of Yahuwah. And you're filled with the strength that is indescribable. And it's both the hardest thing you'll ever have to do and the hardest thing you'll ever have to do and the easiest thing you'll ever. The hardest thing you'll ever have to do is because you're going to have to do the one thing that all humans hate to do, and that is to give up total control, to swallow your pride, to admit you were wrong, to attempt to absolve and gain forgiveness and redemption for what you know was wrong, admitting you were wrong, repenting before Yahuwah, Yahusha, and asking for his salvation and surrendering to him completely. We're humans, we don't like to give up control. We don't like to admit we're wrong. But when you feel his grace and his love and his redemption, when you're flooded with the set-apart spirit, the breath, the Ruach HaKodesh, and your heart is peaceful, true, righteous, justified, and sanctified, and you're truly on your knees, grateful before Yahuwah Yahusha, a gratefulness you never felt before, a thankfulness you cannot manufacture, but which is so true. You feel it in your DNA, in your genetic code, and you're expressing it for the first time in your life, because you've been flooded with his grace. You feel his forgiveness. You feel his redemption. You now know you have that everlasting life, that glory, that strength, that love, that peace, that solace, that healing, that joy. You feel the vibrancy, the robustness, the dynamism of it, of the path you're walking on that leads to everlasting life. You have everlasting life. It's written on your heart. You know it. You feel it. And so it's both the hardest thing you'll have to do in coming to him and surrendering, and it'll be the easiest thing you ever do once you're saved, because his yoke is gentle and his burden is light, and he gives you the strength to walk this path.